My name is Clarissa, 36 years old, and my last birthday dinner at the most luxurious restaurant in the city turned into a nightmare I will never forget. In front of my parents, my sister, and dozens of guests, my niece, Haley, 16 years old, threw a glass of red wine straight onto the champagne silk dress I had saved for half a year to buy, then sneered, "Now you finally look as cheap as you really are." No apology, no defense from my mother or sister. In that moment, I knew my patience had reached its end. Have you ever been humiliated in public by your own family on your special day? If it were you, would you stay silent or stand up? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe to the channel to stay with me, because right after this, I'll tell you what happened next. I was born in Des Moines, Iowa, into a typical middle-class Midwestern family. From the outside, people would see my parents, Charles and Marjorie, always proud of their two talented daughters. But only I knew that pride was never shared equally. I still remember a summer afternoon at 8 years old when Vanessa, my older sister, was given a brand new glossy piano, placed neatly in the living room. For a whole week afterward, every time guests came, my mother would pull them over proudly. "My eldest daughter is going to be an artist." And I would stand quietly in the doorway, clutching the old guitar I had found at a garage sale. No one asked if I wanted to learn. No one noticed me fumbling with broken strings I had to stitch back together with thread. One day, I gathered my courage and asked my father, "Dad, I want to learn music too." He waved me off. "You don't have musical talent like your sister. Don't waste time. Just focus on your studies." That sentence branded itself into my memory. It taught me that in their eyes, talent was something Vanessa inherently had, while I was the one who had to make up for everything with effort. In 8th grade, I joined the state speech contest. I prepared alone, wrote my own piece, and practiced in front of the mirror in my small bedroom. On the night of the finals, when I won first place, my teachers clapped loudly. I scanned the audience, hoping to see my parents' proud faces. But when I got home, my mother's only reaction was, "You were lucky. Probably not many strong competitors." By contrast, a year later, when Vanessa won second place in a small school photo contest, the whole family threw a party. Friends and neighbors filled the house. A large cake sat on the table, and my father raised a toast. I quietly cleared dishes, wondering, why was my joy always diminished while hers was always magnified into glory? The most painful memory was my high school graduation. That day, my name was called on stage to receive an honors diploma. My achievements moved many teachers to tears. I lifted my head to find my parents' faces, but the seats where they should have been were empty. Later, I found out they had left early to attend Vanessa's boyfriend's birthday party. I held the diploma, forcing a smile, but my heart felt hollow. I tried many times to impress them. At the science fair, I built a solar system model out of recycled batteries, working late nights. The prize was a trip to the science museum. When I eagerly told my mother, she only said, "Nice. But next week Vanessa has an art exhibit at the local gallery. You should go support her." Another night, I came home with an invitation to join the national debate team. I had barely opened my mouth when my father interrupted. "Vanessa was just offered an assistant role at the gallery. That's a huge opportunity." Moments like that repeated endlessly, layering into invisible scars. I learned to swallow my words, to hide my excitement, knowing no one would really care. Once, I confided in my Aunt Rose, my mother's younger sister. She sighed softly, holding my hand. "Clarissa, sometimes in families roles are set from the start. You're the responsible one. They assume you'll be fine, that you can take care of yourself. Vanessa always needs protection, and your parents chose to give it to her." "But I want to be seen too, Auntie," I choked. "I want to hear them say even once, 'We are proud of you.'" She hugged me tightly, saying nothing more. As time passed, the favoritism became clearer. Vanessa always had big gifts, long trips, and framed photos hanging bright in the living room. My certificates were stuffed into cardboard boxes under the stairs. Every time we moved, my mother would toss a few away, saying, "Too many scraps of paper, no point keeping them." One day, when I was about 15, my parents bought Vanessa a used car to make it easier for her art classes. I asked if I could share it, at least for weekend jobs. My father frowned. "This car is an investment in Vanessa's future. You can take the bus, it will build patience." I stayed quiet, but those long bus rides taught me independence. Sitting on those hard seats watching the city blur past, I promised myself, one day I'll drive my own car bought with my own money. I'll never forget the winter of senior year when I went to Washington, D.C. with the debate team for nationals. All my teammates had parents cheering in the audience except me. My family seats were empty again. I called home and my mother was busy preparing another of Vanessa's photo shows. "You're strong," she said on the phone. "Just see it as independence training." I hung up, tears streaming down, but still took a deep breath, walked on stage and gave my speech. I won the silver medal, but when I came home the only comment I got was, "Don't get cocky. Your sister is the real artist in this family." I remember one autumn evening at dinner. Vanessa talked about her landscape photography project. My parents nodded, praising her creativity and natural talent. I tried to add, "I was invited to intern at Wells Fargo." My mother lifted her glass, casually saying, "Banks always need staff. Nothing special." I lowered my eyes, quietly cutting my steak, heart heavy as stone. Those memories, even after years, still feel like yesterday. Every time I think of them, I feel both pain and a strange determination. If they won't see me, I'll make the world see me. If they dismiss me, I'll prove my worth through independence. I never imagined that the wounds of childhood, from the old guitar, from the forgotten diploma, from the empty seat in the auditorium, would become the silent drive that carried me to places no one in my family thought I could reach. And those same memories were what made my last birthday the moment I could no longer endure. I stepped into 18 with a determination I didn't know I could hold for so long. After graduation, I told myself, if no one will lift me up, I'll walk on my own. And so the difficult journey began. When I enrolled at the University of Iowa, my parents handed me a thin envelope with a few $100s. My mother said lightly, "This is just a starter. The rest you handle yourself. You've always been smart and independent." I smiled, taking it while my heart sank. That "handle yourself" sounded painfully familiar. I majored in business administration, studying while working. By day, I worked the coffee counter at a small shop near campus. In the evenings, I cleaned offices for an insurance company, wiping desks, vacuuming long, cold hallways. Late at night, I took on data entry for a logistics firm, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. 3 jobs, a packed class schedule, and little sleep became my routine. Meanwhile, every weekend I saw Vanessa's photos on social media, showing off her spacious New York apartment, where she studied at a prestigious art school. In the pictures, she stayed by a grand piano, holding a wine glass, her caption reading, "Follow your passion, it's never too late to live for art." Those photos received countless compliments, including proud comments from my parents. "Our daughter is so talented." Sometimes I wondered if they ever bragged about me, the younger daughter who quietly worked day and night to keep her college dream alive. One evening I was so exhausted I fell asleep in the study lounge. My classmate Melissa shook me awake. "Clarissa, go rest or you'll get sick." I smiled, my voice hoarse. I need to finish the group paper. Other people can count on their families, but I only have myself." Melissa looked at me with a touch of pity in her eyes, but I brushed it off. I didn't want to be seen as someone to pity. 4 years of college passed like that. I graduated with honors, though no parents waited outside the hall with flowers like the other students. I walked back to the dorm alone, holding my diploma. But this time there were no tears. I only felt a quiet pride rising inside. I did it on my own. After graduation, I applied to Midwest Capital Group, a mid-sized financial firm in Minneapolis. At first, I was just a data analyst staring at dry spreadsheets day after day. But I didn't complain. I learned to observe, to listen closely in meetings to details most young colleagues overlooked. Once, during a discussion on investment strategy, my boss asked, "Does anyone have another idea?" The room stayed silent. I slowly raised my hand and gave an analysis based on data I had tracked after hours. He looked at me surprised. "Young lady, you've got talent. I'll let you present the report next week." From that small chance, I began to get noticed. I took on more projects, stayed later, worked more carefully, and each achievement became a step up the ladder. No one handed me a rose-covered path, but I laid my own bricks patiently. Meanwhile, Vanessa still lived in her own world. After a few years of art school, she married Daniel, a wealthy real estate businessman. Their lavish Chicago wedding was hosted in grand style by my parents, while I sat in the back row, quietly snapping a few photos before heading back to my budget hotel. Afterward, Vanessa lived in a 5-bedroom mansion, traveled everywhere, and never forgot to show off every detail. My parents never forgot either, always repeating, "See? Your sister is so lucky and successful." I didn't argue. I didn't need glossy photos to prove myself. My success wasn't glamorous, but it was real. After 7 years, I was promoted to regional director, a position many colleagues dreamed of. My own office, a team under my lead, and most importantly, I got there on my own. My apartment in downtown Minneapolis wasn't big, but it was bright and neat. I bought it with savings, no loans. I drove an old Toyota that still ran well after many years, and I kept a steady savings account. I didn't have luxury vacations, but every weekend I could brew a cup of coffee, open the balcony doors to the street below, and feel peace. The night I received my promotion news, I called my parents, excitement in my voice. I was just promoted to regional director. On the other end, my mother gasped softly, "That's nice. But this week Vanessa has her gallery opening and the whole family is preparing. You should call and congratulate her." I stayed silent a few seconds, then whispered, "Okay, I will." After hanging up, I sat alone in my dark living room. My promotion joy suddenly felt dim. But I told myself, it's fine. I've long been used to celebrating myself. The next day, my colleagues threw a small party at the office. They raised glasses, handed me flowers. I smiled, warmed by a kindness my family had never given. In that moment, I realized value doesn't have to come from those who gave you life. Value comes from effort, and from those who truly see you. Late that night, I returned to my apartment, set the bouquet on the dining table, and turned on the soft yellow light. Looking around, I saw the small room filled with my marks. Photos I had taken, books I had read, my college diploma framed in wood. All of it was built from years of grueling work. No one handed it over. No one provided. It was all mine. Sometimes I still felt a pang seeing Vanessa praised. But then I remembered the sleepless nights entering data, the rushed mornings to class after night shifts, the freezing winter bus rides. Those memories, harsh as they were, taught me one truth: I can stand tall without anyone holding me up. And that foundation prepared me for the shock on my birthday night, when a glass of red wine spilled over me didn't only ruin a silk dress, but awakened my resolve. No one, not even family, had the right to tear down the worth I had built with my own hands. Dylan came into my life like a fresh breeze after years of burying myself in work. He was a tech engineer, calm and thoughtful, with blue eyes that gleamed with intelligence and a smile that made me feel heard, understood. We met at a startup conference in Minneapolis, where he presented a software project and I handled financial analysis. On our early dates, Dylan often took me to small coffee shops, where he spoke passionately about his work and I listened, feeling, for the first time, that someone truly valued my hard work. I remember once he told me, "Clarissa, you're like the backbone. You keep everything aligned even when no one notices." That sentence brought tears to my eyes. I had been overlooked for so long that even a single acknowledgement warmed my heart. 2 years together, I began to believe I had found someone who could fill the gaps my family had left. When Dylan proposed during a trip to Colorado, I cried in his arms. I trusted him so much I opened myself completely, convinced happiness was finally mine. We started planning the wedding. I didn't wish for extravagance, only a simple ceremony with friends and family present. But as planning began, I noticed odd signs. Dylan often had sudden meetings, sometimes disappearing all night with the excuse of working with the engineers. He also grew closer to Vanessa, asking her for advice on artistic decor for the wedding. At first, I felt glad, thinking Vanessa finally cared. But unease crept in as I saw them whispering, sharing glances I couldn't read. The truth struck on a Friday afternoon, just weeks before the wedding. I dropped by Dylan's apartment unannounced, carrying a box of pastries I had baked. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside and my heart sank into a pit. On the sofa sat Dylan and Catherine, Vanessa's best friend from college. The same woman I had welcomed into our home for years, treating like a sister. They weren't hiding, no excuses could erase what I saw. I let the pastry box slip to the floor, my voice trembling. "You two really did this to me?" Dylan jumped up, pale. "Clarissa, let me explain. This was just a mistake." Catherine scrambled to pull her shirt on, avoiding my eyes. I turned and walked away, tears streaming. I didn't need to hear another word. That night I told my parents. I hoped at least once they'd stand with me. But disappointment met me again. My mother said, "Weary, men all slip sometimes. Don't make a scene and ruin the marriage. It's just a test, it'll settle down." My father added, "A decent man like Dylan is hard to find. Don't be rash. Think of the future." The people who should have held me, who should have said I deserved better, told me to shut my eyes and endure, for the family's image. I sat in my bedroom staring at the wedding dress hanging on the closet door. Light reflected off the white fabric, but inside me was darkness. If I agreed to overlook this, my life would no longer belong to me. The next morning I returned the engagement ring. Dylan came, pleading, promising, swearing he'd cut Catherine off. I looked at him, my voice calm, almost strange. "Dylan, you didn't only betray me. You betrayed the only trust one ever gave someone else. There's no second chance." He dropped to his knees, clutching my hand, but I pulled away. When he left, the apartment was so silent I could hear the clock ticking, reminding me life would go on. My family couldn't hide their irritation. Vanessa avoided my eyes. I realized deep down she hadn't been surprised at all, as if she had known and stayed silent. When I confronted her, she only shrugged. "Love is complicated, Clarissa. Don't be so rigid." That sentence cut like the final knife. I understood then. To them, my feelings had never mattered. Once again, I stayed in the storm with no shelter from family. But unlike childhood, this time I was grown. I chose to cancel the wedding. I packed the gown into its box, returned it to the store, and used the refund to pay off the last of my student loans. I lifted my chin up again, stitching my wounds by working and living on. My relationship with family fractured clearly after that. Shared dinners turned into heavy silence. Whenever I was present, my mother glanced around as if I were the one disturbing piece. I didn't react. I stayed calm, but inside I built a wall. There were long nights I lay awake, remembering Dylan calling me a steady backbone, remembering the naive trust one had placed in the wrong hands. But through the tears I realized one thing. I still had myself. I still had these hands, this mind, this heart, and no one could ever take them away. When I walked into the office each morning, dressed in a neat suit, and heard colleagues dip their heads with, "Good morning, director," I told myself, I survived both betrayal and my family's indifference. Nothing can knock me down anymore. From then on, the distance between me and my family wasn't just a few hours' drive from Minneapolis to Des Moines. It was a chasm of broken trust. And I knew that one day, that chasm would be widened even more when the truth I had kept buried finally rose up. After I called off the wedding with Dylan, I thought I had climbed out of the deepest pit of my life. But I didn't expect that in the years that followed, my own family would push me into another spiral. This time not with neglect, but with quiet exploitation that dragged on until I nearly lost the last of my faith. Vanessa began getting comfortable with borrowing the supplementary credit card under my name. At first, she called me in a sweet voice. "Clarissa, can I use the card to buy a few things for the gallery? Just temporarily, I'll pay it back at the end of the month." I signed the form to issue an extra card, thinking simply that my sister was starting a business and would pay me back soon. But the month ended and a bill for nearly $2,000 landed in my mailbox. I called Vanessa and she gave a snide laugh. "Oh, I've been so busy I forgot. But you're a director now. This amount is nothing to you." Her answer choked me. I paid the debt because I couldn't stand the thought of my credit score being affected. But it didn't stop at once. One bill followed another. Designer clothes, plane tickets, even a weekend trip to Miami. When I spoke up, my mother cut in. "You're the independent one. You should be generous. Vanessa still has many difficulties. You need to understand." I clenched my jaw. I wanted to stop it so many times, but whenever I brought it up, the family pressed the big sister's responsibility, as if it were a destiny I couldn't refuse. Haley, Vanessa's daughter, seemed to grow up inside that very permission. From a young age, she was taught that everything belonged to her, and I, the aunt, was just a shadow meant to indulge her. When Haley was 14, I discovered my laptop was gone. I tore through the apartment, then got a message from a friend. "Clarissa, I just saw your niece listing a MacBook exactly like yours on the marketplace." I went to Vanessa's house. The laptop was already gone. Haley said coolly, "I needed money for a Louis Vuitton bag. Your old laptop isn't important." I was so angry I could barely speak. I turned to Vanessa, but she only folded her arms and said coldly, "She's young, Clarissa. Don't blow it out of proportion. You can buy a new one. Why make it so serious?" My parents, instead of defending me, piled on, "You're the one with a job, you have means. Think of the child. She's growing, wanting things is normal." I sat there listening to my own parents justify plain theft. I wanted to scream, to smash the invisible wall that had trapped me for years, but in the end I stayed silent. I knew that if I argued, they would slap the selfish label on me. From then on, Haley looked down on me more and more. Every time we met, she didn't hesitate to throw barbs. "Aunt Clarissa, you dress this old and you're a director?" Or, "You must be lonely, no one wants to marry you." I swallowed each word like thorns. I had learned to endure, but endurance doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. The last straw was this year's birthday dinner. I had tried to hope that at least one day a year I would be treated with respect. I spent half a year saving to buy the champagne-colored silk dress I loved. That night, under the restaurant's warm golden lights, I told myself, "Let yourself enjoy this for once." But Haley didn't miss her chance. In the middle of chatter and laughter, she suddenly lifted a glass of red wine and tossed it straight at me. The wine soaked into the soft fabric, spreading dark streaks like throbbing wounds. Then she sneered, her voice ringing through the restaurant, "Now you finally look as cheap as you really are." The entire table fell silent. My heart hammering. Vanessa gave a slight smile, then feigned alarm. "Oh, Haley, you're so clumsy. It must have been an accident." My mother chimed in, "Clarissa, go clean up. Don't make a scene, you'll embarrass us." Embarrass us? I looked down at the dress, not just a few $1,000s, but a symbol of my effort. I looked up and saw not a glimmer of sympathy in anyone's eyes. Only awkwardness, avoidance, and in Haley triumph. In that instant it hit me. For years I had been turned into a wallet, a target for the family's pent-up spite. And now, on my birthday, they didn't even bother to hide their contempt. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I simply smiled. But inside, something quietly broke, and at the same time something else rose up. A new resolve. That was the end of my compliance, and the beginning of a path where I would no longer let anyone cross my boundaries. That night, I went back to my apartment with a silk dress stained with wine, the stench of humiliation still clinging to my skin. As the door clicked shut, I leaned against the wall and took a long breath. Tears threatened, but I held them back. I had cried too much for them already. This time I would do it differently. I opened my laptop. The blue glow in the silent room felt like a ritual beginning. My hands trembled slightly, but each click was decisive. First order of business: cancel every supplementary card. The cards with Vanessa's and Haley's names, debts I had bent my back to pay for years, were reduced to meaningless numbers. I logged into the bank system, one by one, and hit deactivate. With each press, it sounded like a chain falling away. Next, I addressed the small condo I owned in the Minneapolis suburbs, which I had been renting out for extra income. I'd heard too many stories of assets being seized within families, and now I knew I couldn't leave any gaps. I contacted the bank and completed the paperwork to transfer the condo into a personal trust, where only I had control. When I signed the agreement electronically, my heart felt lighter, as if I had finally raised a strong wall to protect myself. But most importantly, I didn't stop at defense. I opened each email and downloaded all bank statements from the past 3 years. Every transaction Vanessa and Haley made on the supplementary cards was laid bare. $1,850 for flights to Miami, $760 for a Louis Vuitton bag, $495 for a dinner in Chicago. I organized everything into a folder named Evidence. I paused at a $5,200 withdrawal from just a few months ago, the one Vanessa had promised to pay back the following week. I clearly remembered my mother saying, "Then, don't make things hard on your sister, she has so much to handle." Now that money sat stark on the page in black and white, no longer a family matter to smooth over. It was late, but I didn't feel tired. I opened my contacts and found the number for Erica, my close college friend, now a well-known attorney in Minneapolis. I sent a text, "Erica, I need to see you urgently. It's a legal matter and family. Are you free tomorrow?" In less than 10 minutes, the phone vibrated. Erica called directly, "Clarissa, from your message I can tell it's bad. Tell me, what happened?" I hesitated for a few seconds, then poured everything out. Years of being exploited, the credit cards, and the humiliating night at the restaurant. On the other end, I heard Erica exhale. Good grief. I always knew you were treated unfairly, but I didn't realize it was this bad. All right. Meet me at my office tomorrow. Bring every statement and document. If they turned you into a wallet, they're going to face consequences now. I closed my eyes, feeling, for the first time in years, that I wasn't alone. After hanging up, I sat before the screen staring at the digital files. In my head echoed the familiar lines, "You're the successful one. Be generous. Men all make mistakes. Don't make a scene." Each sentence had weighed on my chest like a stone for years. But tonight I set them down. I told myself, no one has the right to trample me anymore. This time they'll learn what it means to pay a price. I hung the silk dress, still blotched with wine, on the closet door. I didn't throw it away. I wanted to keep it as evidence, as a reminder. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was drawn, mascara smudged, but in my eyes there was something clearer than ever. Awakening. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote down the buried memories. Vanessa's piano, my abandoned graduation ceremony, the mountain of bills. I recorded everything, leaving out no detail. I knew that if I wanted change, I had to prepare thoroughly, not just with emotion but with evidence and strategy. Around 3 a.m. I made myself a cup of coffee. It was still dark outside, but I felt a new dawn approaching. Not the light of blind forgiveness, but the light of someone who has finally learned how to protect herself. I looked around the apartment. An apartment I bought with my own hard-earned money. On the shelf was a stack of finance books I'd read. In the corner, the old sofa I picked up at a thrift market. And in the kitchen, neat rows of colorful mugs I'd collected. Each item was proof that I didn't need anyone to provide for me. And I wouldn't let anyone take it away again. That night, I set new boundaries for myself. From now on, no more, "The successful one must always pay." No more, "You're the older sister, you must be generous." No more closing my eyes and letting it slide. If they chose to look down on me, they would lose the privilege of having me in their lives. I closed the laptop at daybreak. Outside the window, the first sunlight slipped in, shining on the files I had just prepared. I knew the coming battle wouldn't be easy. But at least this time I was ready. And I wouldn't back down. That weekend, I drove nearly 4 hours from Minneapolis to Des Moines. In the trunk was a thick stack of files, the evidence I had painstakingly compiled all week. I knew the family meeting my parents called wouldn't be to listen to me, but to accuse me. But this time I was no longer the daughter who stayed silent with her head down. My childhood home came into view, still with the neatly trimmed lawn my father kept and the bougainvillea my mother grew by the porch. I parked and sat for a few minutes, breathing as if I needed to steady my heartbeat before walking into battle. The door opened. My mother stayed there with a tense face, hands clasped over her apron. My father sat at the living room table, scowling. Vanessa was already there, arms crossed, eyes flashing. Next to her, Haley clutched her phone, wearing brand new white sneakers. I recognized them as a limited edition pair costing nearly $1,000. "Finally, you're here," my father began, his voice hard. "We need to talk now." I set the file bag by the chair. Vanessa snapped immediately. "Clarissa, who do you think you are to dare cancel the cards? My kid's payment got declined right in the store last week. People looked at her like a thief. You humiliated me and my daughter in public." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice calm. "Vanessa, you're the one humiliating yourself, not me. And here's the truth." I opened the bag, pulled out the thick printed statements and slid them to the middle of the table. Here, 3 years of transactions. Every single charge is listed. More than $3,200 for a Gucci bag in Chicago. $1,450 for flights to Vegas. $5,200 toward Haley's car payments. And many, many more. Haley looked up, ready to protest, but I held up a few more pages. "Here's the receipt for the MacBook you sold for cash. Everything is under my name." The living room went so still I could hear the wall clock ticking. My mother rushed in, flustered. "Clarissa, don't speak so harshly. After all, your sister's blood is thicker than water." I turned to her, my gaze freezing over. "Blood doesn't mean a one-way bank, Mom. Since when did this family decide I'm an endless ATM?" Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. "You talk like you're a victim. Without family, would you have climbed to director like now? Who sent you to college? Who? I cut her off. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. You were fully funded at an expensive art school. What about me? I received less than $1,000 from our parents for all 4 years. Don't you dare use non-existent sacrifices to erase the truth. My father growled, You're being insolent. In this house, people sacrifice for each other, not nickel and dime like you. I leaned back, my voice dropping low. If sacrifice means one person is drained dry while the others feel entitled to benefit, that's not sacrifice. That's exploitation. Haley muttered, You're overreacting. It was just a few things. I stared directly at her. Haley, you're 16 years old. It's time to understand responsibility. When you take what isn't yours, it's not a few things. It's stealing. And the truth is, you learned that from your mother. Vanessa flushed and shot to her feet. I'm not sitting here to be insulted by you. I set another stack of documents on the table. This is the financial fraud complaint my attorney has prepared. I haven't filed it because I still want to preserve some notion of family. But if it happens one more time, I won't hesitate. My parents were stunned. My mother turned pale, her voice shaking. You can't do that to your sister. No, Mom, I said firmly. She can't do that to me. I'm not the 8-year-old waiting for a compliment that never comes. I'm grown enough to set boundaries. The living room thickened with silence. Vanessa trembled with anger, Haley kept her head down, and my parents said nothing. I saw in their eyes shock, shame, and helplessness because for the first time I wasn't retreating. I gathered the files into my bag and spoke evenly but decisively. If this is a family, then act like one. But if you only see me as a bank, then that bank is closed from now on. No one said another word. Only the sound of my heels on the wood floor marked each step, a steady rhythm that said I would never let them trample me again. The air in the living room was so taut a single strong breath could have shattered it. Vanessa was still seething over the statements when I set another brown envelope on the table. I opened it and pulled out a set of papers stamped in blue ink, signatures and notary seals gleaming under the ceiling light. There's something else you and the family should know, I said slowly, keeping my voice steady. The condo in the Minneapolis suburbs, the one everyone talked about, saving for Haley when she goes to college. I've transferred full ownership into a personal trust. Irrevocable. Vanessa's face drained at once, as if someone had slapped the pride already cracked inside her. She leapt up, pointing at me. You have no right. That was a plan we all made together. It was for Haley, for her future. I kept my gaze calm and pushed the documents to the center of the table. Here's a copy of the signed agreement with my signature and my attorney's. Everything is legal. I bought that condo with my own money, and now it's fully protected. No one can touch it. My mother went speechless, her hands trembling as she grabbed the papers. She read hungrily, and when she reached the notarization, she let them fall, the pages fanning across the table. Clarissa, doing this, you're truly turning your back on family? I faced her, my voice no longer shaking. No, Mom. I'm turning my back on exploitation. I won't accept being treated as an emergency wallet anymore. Haley burst into sobs, 16-year-old panic choking her words. Mom, what about me? Who's going to take care of me? Aunt Clarissa took everything. Vanessa wrapped an arm around her daughter, but her eyes flashed, anger and desperation intertwined. She screamed, Clarissa, you've destroyed everything. How can you be this selfish? I exhaled and set my hand on another pile of evidence. In that moment, a voice cut through the suffocating air, low, slow, and heavy. Enough. The whole room froze. My father, Charles, who had been silent since the start, finally spoke. He took off his glasses and set them on the table, eyes shifting from Vanessa to my mother. I warned you all long ago, he said, his voice rough. But none of you would listen. Vanessa gaped. What are you saying, Dad? You're taking her side? Charles leaned back, gave me a steady look, then turned to the others. I was the one who encouraged Clarissa to protect her assets. I've seen it clearly for years. She works herself to the bone while the rest of you feel entitled to spend. I didn't step in because I wanted to believe you'd change. But when I heard about the credit cards, about the condo, I knew the line had been crossed. My mother reeled, turning to her husband. You knew about this? And you didn't tell me? I told you many times, my father said, emphasizing each word. I told you to stop indulging Vanessa. I told you to stop covering for Haley. But you kept saying family must protect each other. And you turned Clarissa into the shield that took every hit. Vanessa bit her lip, face blazing red. Dad, you're betraying me? Charles looked straight at his eldest. No, Vanessa. I've never betrayed you. But you betrayed your own sister. You exploited her, and you taught your daughter to follow the same path. And now you want to blame anyone but yourself? Vanessa choked up, collapsed into a chair and wrapped her arms around Haley, who was sniffling. For the first time I saw real confusion in her eyes, none of the usual arrogance. My mother held her head, whispering as if she couldn't believe it. All these years. I thought I was holding the family together. Turns out I did the opposite. I looked at my father, a rush of mixed emotion rising, surprise, gratitude, and a sting of sadness. I had never imagined there would be a day he stood by me and openly admitted I needed protection. I took a deep breath, my voice softening but still firm. I don't want this family to fall apart. But if keeping it together means I'm trampled, then I choose to walk away. The condo is protected. And this is only the first step. The room held its breath. Vanessa stayed quiet. Haley buried her face in her mother's chest and sobbed, and my mother sat in a daze. My father crossed his arms, his steady gaze a confirmation. From here on out, nothing would be the same. In the days after the confrontation in Des Moines, my childhood home fell into a heavy quiet. Vanessa cut contact completely. Her number still sat in my contacts, but every time I called, all I heard was the cold recorded voice. The number you have dialed is not reachable. On social media she blocked me. But one thing surprised me. Daniel, her husband, reached out. One afternoon as I was sorting files in my Minneapolis office, the phone rang. On the other end was Daniel's voice, low, hesitant. Clarissa, I know Vanessa cut you off. But I need to say this. Thank you. I went silent for a few seconds, unsure I had heard right. Thank me? For what? For keeping this family from sinking deeper, he sighed. I've tried to tell Vanessa many times that the way she treats you, and even Haley, is hurting everyone, but she wouldn't listen. You did what I couldn't. I heard the tiredness and the gratitude in his voice. Daniel, I didn't want to break your family. I only wanted to reclaim the respect I deserve. I understand, he paused. I hope one day Vanessa will understand too. The call was brief, but it left me oddly relieved. At least someone inside that circle saw the real value of what I did. Another evening as I was making tea, my phone buzzed. A text from Haley. Annie, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong that day. The truth is, Mom always told me to look down on you, that you always thought you were better than everyone. I believed her and went along. But now I see, she wasn't right. I sat still, reading the shaky lines from the niece who had once thrown a glass of wine at me. I didn't reply right away. I gave myself time to listen to what I felt. Pain, tenderness, and a flicker of hope. Finally, I typed, "Thank you for telling the truth. You're young, you can choose differently. When you're ready, I'll always listen." I set the phone down and took a deep breath. That message was like a thin ray of light slipping through a dark wall, reminding me not everything was lost. While my family was in turmoil, I focused on rebuilding my own life. Erica, my best friend and the attorney who helped me protect my assets, advised me, "You need a step back, Clarissa. A place to refuel. Come somewhere with me." So we packed our bags for Seattle, then drove down the Oregon coast. One morning, watching the sunrise at Cannon Beach, Erica said out of nowhere, "Have you ever thought that everything you've been through is exactly the experience other women need?" I was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "You work in finance and you've been exploited financially by your own family. You know what it takes to regain control. Why not start a training program, help other women find independence too?" The idea fell like a seed into fertile soil. On the way back to Minneapolis, I filled an entire notebook with plans. Small community workshops, guest experts, even combining therapy support with financial education. 3 months later, my first training class officially launched at a small community center. I rose before nearly 20 women. Some newly divorced, some in debt, some young and determined not to depend on anyone, and shared my story. I didn't name anyone in my family, but I told the truth. Being treated like an ATM, the humiliation of a public insult, and the strength of setting boundaries. When I finished, many of them cried, then squeezed my hands and said, "Thank you. Now I believe I can do it too." Meanwhile, something else unexpected happened. My parents started family therapy. It was my father who initiated it. On a call, he said, "Your mother and I have started seeing a counselor. I realize that if we don't change, we're going to lose you for good." His voice caught. I wasn't used to hearing vulnerability from a man who had been hard all his life. My mother chimed in, cautious, "Clarissa, I know I've done a lot wrong. I played favorites, I didn't protect you. I'm learning to look back honestly." I sat by the window of my Minneapolis apartment, listening to my parents admit what I had waited a lifetime to hear. I didn't rush to forgive, but for the first time I felt a chance to mend. As time passed, my life began to feel fuller. On evenings after the training sessions, I often walked around Beedi Maka Ska, watching the lights ripple across the water. I knew the road ahead would still be uneven, but for the first time in years I wasn't walking in the dark. My family hadn't changed entirely. Vanessa remained silent. No calls, no messages. But Haley started sending me photos she took at school, along with hesitant questions. "Do you think this one works?" I answered, offered feedback, encouraged her. And I understood. Sometimes rebuilding doesn't start with the adults but with the next generation, where there's still hope and the capacity to love without exploiting. 6 months after the confrontation that shook our family, I got to my feet in my new apartment in Minneapolis, the place I chose myself and paid for on my own. Not large, not luxurious, but bright and flooded with sunlight. I strung lights around the balcony and set out a few pots of lavender so that every time I opened the door, a gentle fragrance drifted in. That day I hosted a small gathering, not to celebrate anything specific but simply to welcome myself. For the first time I felt worthy of joy without needing a reason. My parents arrived first. My mother carried a white bakery box, my father a basket of fruit. When I opened the box, a sweet scent rose up. Inside was a lemon cake, the very kind I'd loved since childhood, yet never once had made just for me. I froze as old memories rushed back. All the times I secretly wished for lemon cake at family parties, only to find the table set with chocolate, the kind Vanessa liked. My mother looked at me, her eyes hesitant but sincere. "I remember you once said lemon cake was your favorite. I tried making one today. I don't know if it's as good as the bakeries." I smiled, sliced a piece. The simple taste was so warm it caught in my throat. "It's much better than the bakery, Mom." My father was quiet for a moment, then set a hand on my shoulder. "I know we were unfair for many years. But we're trying to change, Clarissa. I hope you'll give us a chance." I nodded. I didn't promise instant forgiveness, but at least I opened the door to a new beginning. A knock sounded. Haley stayed there in an oversized beige sweater, clutching a handmade notebook. She stepped in, eyes down, voice small. "Auntie, I made this for you." I took it and opened it. Inside, the pages were decorated with colored pens and a few Polaroids Haley had taken. On the first page, in uneven handwriting, it read, "I'm sorry. I don't want to become a copy of my mother." My throat tightened. Haley didn't look me in the eye, but her shoulders shook. I pulled her into a hug, feeling the fragility of a child struggling to find her own path. "Thank you, Haley. What matters is that you spoke up. I believe you can be different, if you truly want to be." Haley nodded, eyes red. She whispered, "I don't want to live under comparisons or pressure anymore. I just want to be myself." I smoothed her hair and said softly, "That's the first step of growing up." The little party went on with gentle laughter. Erica came too with a bottle of white wine. She chatted with my parents and surprisingly they listened, no trace of the old disdain. Instead they asked about the financial training I was running, and for the first time I saw genuine pride in their eyes. Vanessa was still absent. No message, no call. The empty chair beside my mother reminded me there were distances we couldn't bridge yet. But I didn't feel hollow anymore. I had learned that the most important presence is your own presence in your own life. In the living room, directly across from the dining table, I hung the champagne silk dress. The one cleaned almost perfectly but still showing faint stains. People asked why I kept it, why I didn't throw it away. I only smiled, because it reminds me of the day I chose to say, enough. Every time I passed it, I saw it as a symbol. Not of humiliation, but of strength. That dress, with its unerasable scars, proved I had been hurt, and that I rose up, set boundaries, and chose to live for myself. Haley sat across from it, stared for a long time, then asked quietly, "Do you hate me every time you look at it?" I shook my head and smiled. No. I see the truth in it. And the change you're trying to make. Haley exhaled as if a weight had lifted. That night, after everyone left, I stayed alone in the quiet apartment. The warm light fell softly on the wall where the dress hung. I poured a cup of tea and sank into the sofa, filled with a peace I hadn't known for years. I no longer needed anyone's validation to know I had worth. I had found it within myself and no one could take that away. You know, sometimes we spend a lifetime realizing that true worth isn't in what others give us, but in whether we dare to claim it for ourselves. For me, the day that silk dress was stained was the day I was forced to choose. Keep enduring in silence or stand up and end the old cycle. What about you? If your own family looked down on you, would you keep the peace by staying silent? Or would you choose to say, enough, to protect your dignity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonates, please like and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming stories about family, growth, and the power of living true to yourself. There's so much more I want to share, and I believe somewhere in these pieces, you'll find yourself too.